Okay, guys, we'll go back to our official agenda here, and now we'll be talking about, thanks, Dave. Next, we'll be talking about job descriptions for city administrator. Mr. Hilpert's filling in for Gail Stroke tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Of course, some of you may be aware we've changed city administrators, and Gail's prepared to send out the job description to the kind of major publications, and she and the mayor have talked about it, and they've got a plan to go forward. But we wanted to give the council an opportunity to take a look at the job description and review it. We had somewhat planned to do the finance director tonight, feeling that maybe the finance director's previous description didn't represent what the council was looking for currently. But of course, after last Monday, we've kind of changed gears a little bit, and now we're looking at the city administrator position. So kind of the same rules apply. I think Gail sent this out to you several days ago, so it's not really my intent to belabor anything, but if the council has any questions they've got, we can try to answer it. Gail included, I think, 5 or 4 other cities that have city managers or city administrators with their duties. The only thing we'd like to do is wrap it up tonight, and because Gail's got some pretty quick deadlines to meet some periodicals and publications. So any questions we've got, any changes to the job description that you all want to make, and I guess we just open it up then.
Go down first base first, since everyone's had this since last Thursday, Drew? Any changes at all, guys? If so, just raise your hand. Not a lot of procedure on this one, just really trying to get input. And for the public that might be watching, this is our regular work session. It just happens to be here in City Hall, so if we look a little bit more casual or whatnot than normal, that's kind of the reason why. Anything to my left? Anything over here to my right? Drew? I think Ralph?
Drew, does this address residential requirements, or is it necessary?
That's in the charter.
It is in the charter. It's a good question.
And a lot of the duties are also in the charter too. Are they necessary also in here? Not necessarily.
Not necessary. I mean,
right.
One would believe the good candidate would know what those obligations are and requirements are ahead of time. But I would say if the residency's not in there, it's probably worth putting in. I think I'll probably suggest to Gail that she add that. Certainly, and to go further on what the mayor was saying, not every job duty is going to be in here. It would be impossible to do that, of course, but I think what we want it to do is reflect the type of candidate that you all are looking for.
Okay. Any other comments for Drew or questions for Drew? Mr. Mihalovich.
After reviewing these job descriptions from other cities, had you considered any of these that should be included in ours?
I'd like to talk with Gail about that. She couldn't be here tonight. I did not see anything that I would have added, but Gail may have, because it really is something she does quite a bit more often. Of course, there's some things in city manager duties that you wouldn't expect necessarily of a city administrator, because it's so much more policy oriented. So, no, I think.
Rick, did you have a follow-up? Okay. One to my right. Okay, Drew, I think we're excused with that. Moving on to the next agenda item. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry, Kara. I was looking that way. I didn't see your hand up.
It's so tiny. I almost hate to bring it up. But under abilities, the physical abilities in ours, and it says ability to sit for extended periods, and we kind of almost laugh when we read it, but I mean, it's true. But I thought, that almost sounds kind of odd, but when you look at, I think like St. Joseph, they have more working environment. Work is most often performed in an office setting with controlled environment, frequent visits to various locations outside City Hall. I don't know, maybe that or we could strike that altogether. I think that's a given, but I don't know. To me, that
legally,
seems kinda odd.
do you have to list the physical abilities legally?
Kind of leave that in there. Just
that's a legal thing.
Well, yeah, because you could have someone who doesn't have the ability to do some of the things you're talking about, so you need to let them know up front. You'd have to be able to make some kind of a reasonable accommodation, and this is an employee that you need, although minimal for pencil pushers, you need to be able to push your pencil.
Okay, and I guess it's also a given then, kind of how St. Joseph has in theirs, that they must on page 3 of theirs, they talk about that there are frequent visits to various locations outside City Hall. Like, does that doesn't
Well,
need to be in there? Or should we tweak it and just simply add that?
I think
you
a
could
part of
add it.
I think a part of ours in the charter says that I forget exactly what the wording is now, but I think it kind of says you have to be quote unquote kind of a person about town. So to
This
speak,
is
so.
the standard thing we put for these kind of jobs, although honestly, their description, so maybe that is one I should have answered Councilman Mahalovich better on. That's probably a better description. I can ask
It's
Gail.
something I guess you could always ask
Yeah.
Gail, and we could add that.
Thank
Does
you.
council have a problem with that at all on what we're hearing on St. Joe's there? Okay. All right. Ask Gail her opinion, and we'll go from there. Anything else? Okay, Drew. Oh, Bob, go ahead.
I guess my question in looking at this just is there anything that we ask the city administrator to do that isn't covered by what's here? If there's anything that he needs to do that's not covered, then it needs to be added. If it covers every duty that he does, then you can wordsmith it from now until the cows go home. But if it covers everything, why make a change?
I guess the only thing I'd say is because you all are the 10 of you and the mayor are the ultimate deciders about who you want. So if you think these functions accurately reflect what you look for in a city administrator is what we're trying to do today.
That's what I'm saying. If it reflects what we want the administrator to do, I guess the reason for a job description is so there's no ambiguity about what the administrator is expected to do, and so there's no later on there's no saying, well, that's not really in my duty. That's not really something I'm
That's
required to do. So if this will cover what it is we want him to do, then it's adequate.
I think it's essentially the same job description that's been around for some time. So, but
And it goes
guess so.
without. I guess it goes without saying. I'm not seeing the charter in here, or do I see it and it's just not mentioned per se?
I don't
by-
think it's specifically mentioned. But it talks about. No, where was it? Well, maybe I'm wrong about that then. Maybe I've read some different ones.
I'm sorry, Bob. Did you have another comment, Bob?
I just said this other, the one for Columbia, for instance, goes through and lists almost word by word every duty. Ours is more general, but
Right.
it still says that he's to direct staff, he's to plan, he's to
And I think
budget.
per the charter it says
He or she.
responsible to the mayor and the city council. So if those duties change within, correct, Drew?
Sure. I suppose we
Mhm.
could be slightly more specific and say that perform the duties expect or required by the city code and charter.
Would everyone have a problem with that? I mean, the charter is kind of right there on the internet for people to see, and something that she could very easily ask or add to that. Think about Rick.
Are we addressing the education experience and qualifications tonight?
We're addressing it all tonight, sir. Yes.
I like to talk about that a little bit. I mean, our state said it requires an accredited bachelor's degree in public or municipal administration, business administration, or engineering. And I guess we haven't done that in the past. Is that optional, or how do we go about that typically?
Drew.
I mean, could you ask that question again?
Well, I mean, on here it says requires an accredited bachelor's degree in public or municipal administration, business administration, or engineering. Is that what we to stick with, or is that flexible, or is that? I mean, I'm not sure how everybody feels
It
about
is
that.
as flexible as you want it to be. That is not a requirement in the charter. If there's areas that you want to encourage people to apply in, we can certainly expand that. If you want to tighten it up, we can tighten it up.
I definitely agree with the experience portion of that,
Right.
but I think we got to be a little flexible on the.
The
As far as
education.
the actual degree itself.
Yeah.
I mean, you could have someone that went out and got a whatever type of degree 30 years ago and been an administrator for 25 years and would obviously have the experience.
what we have in most other job descriptions is, or the equivalent thereof, type of language. I suppose when they wrote this, they certainly were looking for either an engineer or a, business administrator type guy. Steve Rasmussen had an engineering degree among several other degrees.
Okay. Mr. Mihalovich?
Yeah.
I'm guessing that if it's not explicitly said in here, that during interviews and whatnot, those questions could be answered. But if we had a person that was on paper underqualified, and we wanted them to credential, like I'm aware of the city manager, I know the city manager at Springfield, and he came from Missouri State as an administrator. So I'm see where they have in theirs that certification as a ICMA credentialed manager within 12 months of appointment. I sort of bet that was the result of his particular background or getting candidates like that. So would it be something that, say for instance, we had an excellent candidate and that person didn't necessarily have the credentials, could we throw that in as a requirement upon employment, even though it isn't in the job description?
Sure. Yeah, that would be part of the contract negotiations. You may all select that person on those conditions.
Okay. Anything else, guys? Bob?
For some reason, I was having a little hard time hearing everything you were saying. I think what you said was that if someone came along that had a great deal of experience, might we make an exception to this degree requirement? Is that what I'm not, could you maybe share with us again what you said? Or maybe not all of it, but.
No, I was just saying that if they did not, well, this one says a combination of education experience. If a person came by that didn't have the education experience of the public administrator, yet we felt strongly about that, then as a part of the contract negotiation, we could require them to attend and get a certification.
Okay, and I thought that's what you said,
Yeah.
and here would be my concern in doing that is part of this requirement becomes screening tool, and so would we screen people out that might fit the mold that you just described and might be a very good candidate and might be someone that we would be interested in if they got past the screening process. So I would ask how you would suggest that maybe we would address that if we have this qualification in there.
Well, I would, I think in our interviewing questions, we're going to, I assume we'd have a set of questions that we'd want to have them answer. If we had a strong candidate come up, my point was if we had a strong candidate come up that didn't necessarily have the city public administration background, how's it that we're going to guarantee that they can be an effective public administrator? Why they're going to have to ask a question for that, or we're going to have to require them to get training as a means of employment.
Okay, so I guess the assumption is that the fact that they have that they don't have the public administrator or municipal administration degree, but they would have some other means of meeting the criteria. I'm just thinking, for instance, what if you we'll get close to home here. What if you had not specifically Mr. Betts, but if you had someone that had an IT background or an IT degree, and they had many years, maybe they were in the military or something, and they had many years of administration, what have you, but not necessarily fit this criteria, would they be screened out?
Drew?
Do we interview every application? I don't know what the city's process is. Do we make phone calls to virtually every applicant that applies?
Of course, a great deal of this work will be done by the mayor's selection committee.
Right, which that's one of the reasons I'm asking this question, is because I'm going to be involved in that committee.
They will probably, spearheaded by the chair, no doubt,
Right.
they will take a look at, suppose we get 100 applications. I'm sure that the general process you'll follow is you will screen down those people based just on paper. So you'll look at the resumes and say in, out, in, out, in, out. Then do a telephone calls of half of the people you think are in, and then whittle that down to 10 or so. And don't tie me to the numbers, but
So,
a certain number of in-person interviews. So your concern is, yes, those people might get screened out, but if they're that strong in the application process, they might not.
In
so
other words,
there'll
there
be no screening process by staff prior to or anything. So
I-
we'll have the first and only opportunity to look at the applications originally. So in reading
Yeah.
through the
Well, I
resume, if
believe- I
someone
don't
has
know
I would-
strong-
we'd have to get with Gail, Bob, but I would assume there may be some screening by staff. I know on the finance director positions, if Mickey Mouse applied, for instance,
Right,
you'd probably
right.
just kick that one out and save the committee from that. But
Okay. I just wanted, I'm with Rick on this. I
Right.
would really like
Yeah.
to have the opportunity to look at everyone that has a really strong resume. But I just.
and I think what staff might do, and we'll have to get with Gail, but I think the key is there is just to get the strongest of the strong in the same bucket, so to speak.
Okay, and we'll go through that and, and figure out what we're gonna do as a committee.
And while we're here, by the way, I want to thank Councilman Scrivener for agreeing to chair this. I chose Bob because he's our mayor pro tem, and out of all of you, he's the only elected member of the council that was elected to do that. And I knew with his schedule and whatnot that he would be willing to do so. The other members of the committee are Miss Ann Bax, Stephanie Bell, which you heard tonight. Hi, Stephanie. We're still talking about you. Nimrod Chappell, Miss Mark Ellinger, Dan Clint, Dr. Brian Mitchell with the Jeff City Public Schools, John Pelzer, and I was kind of teasing someone the other day, not just because he's a florist, but John is a very experienced administrator in other cities before coming to Jefferson City, and also is a previous commissioner of administration. So I think he could also help us there with the state aspects of things. Also, President Dr. Rome, who's obviously new to town, but I think will bring us a lot of knowledge from the Lincoln campus, and also President of the local Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Joe Sheppers. So that process will start in the next applicants or advertisements, from what Gail said. Friday will be going out this week, and I think the cutoff for that is roughly the 15th of December. And shortly thereafter, the committee will be meeting, and committee will be meeting obviously before then, trying to get some dates and whatnot lined out for interviews and that kind of thing. And I think I told you the other day, Bob, and I told others on the committee, interviews and that kind of stuff probably won't start until early December, because Gail thought it would take at least a good week or so to kind of get everything together once we got those. Interviews December.
I think, Mr. Mayor, I think you might have slipped up there. I think you meant closed off mid-November.
What did I say? December?
I think you said
oh, my bad.
mid-December.
Nope,
So
nope, November 15th.
it's kind of at the
It's a
near,
Friday.
near Thanksgiving, so it'd take a week
Right.
or so to get
and
ready.
and
start
Gail
your-
thought that would give staff kind of a good week around Thanksgiving and whatnot to look at those more. Ken?
Not, we've talked a lot about education experience, but I just want to make sure that I'm clear on this. Ours is saying the degree plus the 5 years experience, correct? Or an equivalent combination of experience?
Correct.
Okay. I know that, like, the Springfield one, I think, reads a little bit clearer because it talks about the graduation with a degree plus the experience, or it'll do a master's degree with a little bit less experience. I guess I would pose the question to say that this says 5 years experience in this kind of work, and there's a distinction that puts you in a market for, you know, if you increase that to 10 years experience or something like that, it puts us in a different classification of what we're looking for. I don't know if we're comfortable with 5, or if we're looking for somebody that's got more experience in city management, public administration. You may raise the bar on that. And back to the point about if somebody doesn't have the degree set or the whatever, I think that if we want to be open to people that are outside the box a little bit, we have to maybe more clearly state that. I think that a lot of times people look at the education requirements and the experience requirements, and they filter themselves out and don't even apply. And somebody with 5 years experience is probably going to be on the less experience. The point I'm trying to make, I guess, is if we're wanting somebody that's more well experienced and we think we deserve that, we may need to reflect that a little bit more in that piece of this job description. And I mean, I really liked how Springfield has it written. If you change the numbers, I like adding after the degree to say, or a related field. Could be some good, because somebody could have a a degree that isn't one of these three that we list, but it's closely related, or they've got some coursework, or how it makes the connection. I guess I would want to be as flexible as we can be on that side of things, but clearly stating what we're looking to achieve.
Thank you, Ken. I think what we're looking here is from input from the council. Could you make sure that Gail sees that and realizes that? And I think most council members would agree. I don't know as far as the actual number, as far as where it's 4 or 5, but if their termination and 5 and the wording is better, then let's by all means look at that unless someone has a problem. Bob.
And, you know, as far as I'm concerned, not all experience is created equal either.
Right.
You know, you might have somebody that has 5 years experience in Springfield, Illinois, versus somebody that has 10 years experience in Cairo, Missouri or something, you know. So I think that you're absolutely right about the self-screening. You don't want, as the mouse or the mayor referred to Mickey Mouse.
The mouse, yeah. Yeah, mouse with 10 years experience. Because Mickey's really kind of the administrator of Disney World, is he not, Bob? Is that true?
No.
He's the administrator of Disney.
What?
Never mind.
No,
It was a bad
you don't
joke.
want Mickey Mouse.
I was going to go worse,
applying.
so I'm glad
you
I
want to
stopped.
him to be self-screening, but you certainly, there are some good people out there. Maybe they somewhere along the line shifted gears and moved into city administration when they didn't initially think they were going to follow that path, and maybe they worked their way through several cities and what have you, and
You see what
ended
we're
up
trying
in
to-
a pretty good place with pretty good experience, and so you really, I mean, it's not easy to write these things, or everybody would write them, I guess, but I would be for trying to get as many good people to try to apply as possible and not screen themselves out if it's possible that they would make a good administrator for the city.
I think the key is we're trying to cast a wide net.
Yeah,
And we
I
wanna
think we wanna
catch-
cast a
we wanna
wide net,
catch
and
the
then
most
it's up to
qualified
us to
people we
narrow
can.
that,
Right.
narrow that. I'd like to get a lot of applications and have to spend some extra time to narrow them down personally.
Okay. Any other comments before we move on? Okay. Thank you for your time. Per